Hello everyone, welcome to Lever Guns 50. Today we're going to take a little walk through the woods, learn a little bit about tracking, a little bit about deer sign, and see what we can find out in the woods. And we'll have some beautiful scenery, and we'll show you some nice running water, and maybe even find an arrowhead or two. We're just going to have some fun with it. So y'all join us and come along for this little walk through the woods. Hopefully we'll have fun and you'll learn something too. You can see that a buck has rubbed his horns on this tree last year and also this year. He hasn't rubbed all the bark off of it this year, but this is an old sign from last year. When you see scat like this on top of a ant den or a stump, and you can see some of it is quite old, other is new. This is obviously a rabbit, because this is what rabbits do. They keep pooping in the same spot, and that is not the shape of deer poop either. Plus, if you look right here, you can see the rabbit's track. Anytime you see the pine needles sticking up like this, something obviously stepped there. And see, when they step down, you see how the pine needles start raising up. So if I poke like that, something stepped there. See how that, okay, a deer, something heavy stepped there. It's a sharp angle. Something stepped there. This here, on this small pine tree, is an old scrape where the deer have scraped all the bark off of that tree. When you see that, generally, if you look around, you'll see a new one. There's a new one, and there's also another old one. But you can see it especially you can see the pine sap coming out where they have been and have scraped off the bark, and you can see the bark, these little slivers down here at the bottom of the tree. So you need to keep an eye out for these kind of signs, because this definitely tells you there's bucks in the area. And you got that old one right there. If we keep following this trail, we'll probably find some more. Right over there is where the other scrape was. As you can see, this is a fairly well-worn trail coming up through here. And if we follow this trail, right here is another scrape. Now, if you paid attention to this one, you would notice that these little limbs that were probably right here are no longer green. So this is, I don't really see any real fresh marks, but this is February 20. So, you know, it's after deer season. But deer here in Alabama don't lose their antlers until about May, because they're still in rut right now. But you can see he scraped all the way from up there, but the majority of it is like right in this area. But he's busted all these limbs off. Here's a somewhat less obvious one, a little bit harder to see from a distance. But you can tell they have rubbed that bark off. But you can also look around the base of it and you don't see any little crumbs. So it's been a while since it did it. So that tells you that it may have just been a one-time thing. This here is some old tree stumps in the creek. You can tell somebody cut that root there off. This mainly made out of fat lighter, and fat lighter is really good for starting a fire. This thing's been here probably for a lot of years. But I just wanted to show you something interesting. If you see this right here, this is a pine tree. They can grow like 3 years like that until they get ready to shoot up out of the ground. It's a longleaf pine tree. Here's another one that's a little bit higher out of the ground. These pine needles are generally about 1 foot long. And here's the tree, and it's a more adult tree. Let's see. These are some of the pine cones. A lot of them are a lot bigger than this. See all these little, where the pine cones are all chewed up? That squirrels do that. They get the little seeds, pine nuts out of them. Here's one of those pine cones. But up underneath it here, generally, if you can open it up, and if it's not been opened before, these probably been opened. Probably just the rain made them close, but a lot of times have little nuts down up under there. And that's where the squirrels open them up to get the little nuts out. This is where the deer scrapes all the dirt back on the ground. This one's old and really hasn't been used a lot because there's still little trees in it. But if you look above it, he has used these small limbs to rub his scent glands and to mark his territory. It's much easier to track animals in the morning or the evening when the sun is at an angle, because if you look, you see how the edge of that track would show up being dark versus if the sun's straight up, it really blends in and you can't see it, but you can see the dark angle of it because the sun leaves a shadow in half the track. Much harder to track when the sun's straight up, but see, any kind of deformation, any change to the ground is easy to see in the morning or in the afternoon when the sun's at a steep angle. This is where a lot of animals go under the fence. Deer go under the fence here, and coyotes. Just gonna look and see if we see any hair, but I don't see any. But this is a well-worn trail, and a lot of deer, I've seen tracks and such of them going under here. This is maybe 16 inches or so between the ground and the fence, so it's not very much, but they will go under a fence instead of jumping over. A regular sized pine cone. If you're trying to survive in the woods and you're having a hard time making a fire, if you come across this, you found the jackpot, because this is fat lighter, and fat lighter is very easy to light, and it burns really good, and it's hard to put out. All right, I just busted this limb off right here. If you look in there, that is some really rich fat lighter. And if you scrape that up just a little bit, you can light it easily. And that will burn, this right here piece will burn for, it'll burn for a while, because it And it's really hot. It burns really hot. And it puts off some black smoke too. But if you find this out in the woods and you're trying to survive, this little piece right here would build you a lot of fires if you just scraped a little bit off each time. Right here is another deer rub, and it's right here by this fat lighter. This right here is not deer pellets because they're round, but they're kind of flattened. That's rabbit. Here's some more fat lighter. This is the core of the pine tree. Pretty solid. But like I said, if you break it off, get this in the sun where you can see it. That's some rich fat lighter. It smells real strong, like turpentine too. But you can definitely make a fire with this. If you're looking at the floor of the forest, and it looks like this. These kind of marks here tells you that something stepped there. And you can see how square it is. Obviously a deer stepped there. And it went that way. You can see it stepped here. And you can also see very easily it stepped there. And if you look across here, you should be able to see the scuff marks as it went. If you look closely right here, you can see a game trail. A lot of people would probably want to hunt on this well-used game trail, which crosses right here, keeps on going. Let's go up here and examine this game trail. If you look at it, you can see that it goes right here. A deer is not going to walk right here. This is an armadillo trail. It goes right up through there. There's probably an armadillo house at the end of it. And when you're following a deer trail, make sure that it's tall enough to accommodate a deer. Okay, now let's see where this trail goes. So if you follow it up, it goes right here, which is our armadillo hole. And I've seen a lot of people hunt on armadillo trails thinking they were deer trails. Okay, right here, if you look closely, you can see that there is a game trail coming right through here. It goes right up through there, keeps on going. Now let's see if it's a deer trail or an armadillo trail. Well, if we look right here, you can clearly see deer tracks. See if you can see that. Right here's one coming toward us. So this is a deer trail. Probably where some deer are fighting at. Comes on up here. This is a small scrape. And it has the overhanging limb where they rub their glands by their eyes. This is not a well-used scrape. This is just a small one. So obviously a buck has used this trail before. The trail keeps on going on up here. Now these are not animal tracks.
as far as like deer. This is where squirrels been digging up their nuts. And you can tell because there's no leaves at the bottom. If this is where a deer stepped, it would have pushed leaves down in the bottom. And it's a clean at the bottom, just like this one is clean at the bottom. And that one is. Right here you can see a deer trail right here. You can tell because it goes up higher. Small animal trails won't necessarily break through up higher. If you look here, you can see old deer tracks. See how it's smushed down the blade of grass. That's an obvious deer track there. These are also deer tracks. You can see how they crushed down the blades of grass. You see, this is where the deer go. You can clearly see the leaves compressed down into the ground. This is not real high. This is about maybe 30 inches, but deer will go right under that and keep on trucking, especially does, even bucks. So this is obviously a deer trail. We confirmed that it was a deer trail. We also confirmed that bucks walk down this trail. If you look right here, there's a very well-worn game trail. It comes across here, and it runs this way, and it's very well-worn. The only problem is, it goes through that brush there. So that's obviously an armadillo trail. You really got to watch out for those. But see where it ends? It goes up through that brush. Too thick for a deer or even a rabbit hardly to get through. Don't know if the camera will pick this up, but this is a deer bed. These leaves are really squished down good compared to these over here. See how well those are squished down? The deer lays right here. And then when it gets up, it's peed right there several times. Probably a doe. This right here is where a buck's been mating with a doe, running around in circles, tearing up the ground. Look at this scrape here. This thing's been used quite a bit. It was used last year too. You can see the old wound on it. Here's some deer poop. Looks fairly fresh. It's real thick up in here. Just how deer like it. Good place for them to bed down.